Good morning, folks. Dan Galvin here from EnviroSpec. Today we're going to talk about installing gear drives on a pump. And the one thing I love about gear drives is they are so simple to install. And one thing is you need two tools, a 6mm and a 4mm Allen wrench. That's all you need to install this gear drive onto this pump. Now today we have an Allison TSG 1130 pump. This is an awesome pump. It's fully made up. It has everything on it ready to go. But we're going to talk about the gear drive. So first thing we're going to do is remove the cover, and then we're going to take the Allen wrench. This is the 6mm one. Break that bolt right there. And we're going to break all 4 bolts, but for video purposes, we already did loosen these bolts, so it doesn't look like I'm a weakling or anything. So we take these 4 bolts off. Now take these 4 bolts, put them to the side. I don't like to throw anything away, so I usually just save them for a while. Now I'll show you in a bit why we're putting those bolts aside. The first thing we're going to take is the gear drive mounting plate that goes onto the pump. And what we're going to do is going to take the O-ring, place the O-ring on. Now at times what I like to do, if the O-ring doesn't stick on there properly, is maybe take a little gasket sealer, put a little gasket sealer on there, and that way you ensure that the O-ring is going to stay on there well. You take that mounting plate, you put it right on there, and now we're going to take the bolts that come with the gear drive and put them on the mounting plate. Now you see these bolts are quite a bit longer than the bolts we just took out of the pump. So that's why we don't use those pump bolts. Now on this bolt we have a little rubber gasket that's on the washer, and that's the ones that are going to be held up against the pump. So let me just put these up. Before we put these in, what we also like to do is we like to make sure that these bolts are going to stay in there. So we're going to use Loxil. This is, we call it blue glue because it's the red glue, which is like cement. You don't want to use that because once you use the red glue and put it in there, it's never going to come out. So we always like to use the blue glue. It's like a medium strength glue, and we'll put that on to seal these bolts in. And all you need is a drop. That's all you need on there. Just put a little tiny drop in there, and that will hold that bolt in there nicely. Now the glue dries fairly quick, so you don't want to sit there and let it sit overnight. You want to put it on, and you want to tighten it on within a few minutes so that the glue doesn't dry, and then it defeats its purpose. But you do have enough time to do all 4. Again, just a little dab will do you. Take your 6mm Allen, tighten it on. Now also one thing that's really important, remember you are putting steel bolts into an aluminum body on this pump. So you don't want to over tighten these. I learned that from experience. I had to tap out a pump, which was a very expensive pump, because I over tightened them. It calls for 24 foot-pounds of pressure on these bolts, and you know that's not a lot of torque. So I just like to hand tighten them, and the glue is going to do all the work to hold them in. Now the next item we're going to take is the gear. The gear comes with a locking pin on there, and what you can do is it comes with a keyway. Line that up with the gear, and you push the gear all the way in until it's tight, because what happens is that it actually is resting on the shaft. It's not going to hurt anything. I always thought when I first did it you have to raise the gear up a bit. No, you push it all the way in and it'll stay on there. And again, we put a little lock seal on the gear. So we know that's not going to come off. Hold that tight against there. Tighten that up. And again, you don't need a whole lot of torque to keep that on there, but you want enough to keep that on there nice and tight. Now the gear is on. Now you see which way the gear goes. The gear goes onto the outside. You put it on the other way, it's not going to work properly. And now we're just going to take our housing. Oh, but before we do that, I want to put the O-ring on. Again, with the O-rings, I do like to put a little gasket sealer on there. It does help keep them on a little bit better, and so they don't keep falling off and you don't have to fight with them to put them on. Here we go. Now we'll take our housing and I'm going to put that on. And again, it comes with its own bolts with the gear drive, and it comes with washers with that. You put the washers on the bolts, tighten the bolts down. I like to hand tighten them. One anyways, it holds the housing on nice, and then you put the rest of the bolts on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little drop of Loctite on these. Use my 6mm Allen. Again, remember, you don't want to wait too long before you tighten the bolts because the glue will dry on you, and then if you try and tighten them and you break the glue, and it defeats the purpose of even using the glue. Now I'm going to take this one out because I did not put any glue on it. Put my glue. Now again, you tighten steel bolts into an aluminum housing. You really don't want to make it too tight, because you'll either crack the housing or you'll strip the housing out. And then you'll leak oil all over the place, and you'll have to get new pieces for that. So again, about 24 foot-pounds of pressure on these to hold them on. And you were done. Now I obviously installed the sight glass and the oil cap prior to putting it on, and that's it. I think it takes about 5 or 6 minutes to install a gear drive on a pump. I mean, that's what I love about them. They are so quick and so easy. Oh, and the oil you use, you want 80 to 90 weight gear oil for your oil. I recommend you change it out every 100 hours on that. And that's how easy it is to do a gear drive. And if you ever have any questions, please give us a call at EnviroSpec 800-346-4876. Thank you.